welcome to It Takes a Village, Raising Resilient Kids in Today's World. My name is Dr. Ann Bergen, and the purpose of this series of programs is to focus how, as a community, we can come together to support our young people as they strive to create lives of meaning and purpose. But lately, we know that too many of our young people are lost. They're floundering, as evidenced by an increase in anxiety, depression, and now really an epidemic of substance abuse. We do have a town-wide coalition to address substance abuse under the inspirational leadership of our state rep, Jeff Roy. But in the end, a huge part of the solution rests on the courage, determination, and optimism of the individual who's actually suffering from addiction. My guest today, Derek Getchell, has demonstrated courage and determination on many levels. One aspect of his courage is his willingness to be here today to share his story of his journey into, through, and out of addiction. Because we know that by sharing our stories, we can inspire and help guide others out of this maze of addiction. So I'm going to welcome you, Derek. Thanks so much for coming here today. And I think what I felt really good about is when we were talking before the interview and you said, I'm just going to be as honest as I can, ask me anything. And that takes courage because it's tough to be out there. But by your being here and again sharing your story, maybe it's one person you help, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, whatever. But we really appreciate your being here and sort of taking that risk and showing that courage. So I had asked some parents who have adult children who are suffering from addiction that I was going to be I told them I was going to be interviewing you, and I said, do you have any questions for Derek? They had 1 million. So I'm going to weave those questions through because they're desperate for answers to some of these things. So just by your being here, you can help sort things out for us a little bit, okay? Right. So you said you'd be willing to sort of tell us about your journey into addiction, sort of how it got started. Can you start with that, like the beginning of it and where it started for you? Because like you said, it's different. Everybody's journey is different, but for you.
Yeah, I think everyone's journey is different. And I think just to say, I don't have all the answers, but I can certainly share my experience. Right. And I think addicts and alcoholics are a lot more alike than we think. We come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic classes, but our journeys along the way, our stories are different, but the feelings and emotions that lead us to continually drink and drug are often the same. And I think that's where they always tell us in meetings and in recovery networks, identify, don't compare, because we can compare ourselves right out of listening and say, I'm not like that person, I wasn't as bad, or I didn't come from that type of family, I wasn't in that type of background, but identify with the emotions that lead us there. And I guess I'd start out by saying my alcoholism and addiction, I find them to be one and the same. I try not to separate the drugs and the alcohol, so when I share, it's important to say it started young, it started innocently. Actually, I think I was in middle school, and we used to walk home from school, and me and a couple buddies would split a beer 3 ways, after school, once in a while. We'd go into his dad's fridge, we'd take it, we'd have a couple sips, and that kind of started the progression for me, and I think it's important that it is a progressive disease. And then in high school, I played sports, so that kept me busy a lot of the time. And I said, I'm only drinking, but I stayed away from drugs at that point. But when I drank, what happened was I couldn't really slow it down. I would drink on the weekends, and I would just have too much. Would you
binge drink?
Yeah, I would binge drink. Once I had one, it would really set the ball rolling. And a lot of people binge drink and don't become alcoholics. But if you are an alcoholic and you do have that allergy, it will continue to progressively get worse and worse. And then I remember getting into college, and that's when I dabbled a little bit with cocaine. I didn't really have a lot of money, so that's what kind of put the brakes on that. And then I came into contact that my drinking was continuing to progress, and it continued to get worse and worse. And at this point, I wasn't playing sports anymore. My family was kind of going through some struggles. My father was basically dying of active addiction. So my whole family dynamic was changing. So I had a lot of resentment, self-pity, fear. I wasn't feeling too good on the inside, and I came into contact with a couple Percocets, oxycodones, Perc 5s, and I took a couple of them, and I had 3 beers that night, and I thought I had found the magic combination, because for me it was the anxiety and all the negative emotions were very quieted, and they were very dull, and I only had a couple beers, and I didn't make a fool of myself. I didn't wake up with a bad hangover, and I was like, all right, you know, this can kind of work. And that led into a 3-year, I want to say about a 3-year progression. The timeline's a little blurry now of, it started off with 2 perk 5s, and I could still go to class, I could still have a girlfriend, I could still show up for work, and it was the beginning of a double life. And I didn't take them every day, but in the back of my mind, I remember like it was innocent for a little while. And then it came to the point where I was taking them on a Monday, and then a Tuesday, and then on the weekends, and then it became a daily thing.
Where were you getting your supply?
All different people. It was either like friends or, you know, or then it turns into like, you know, you start to get them from the people who are already doing them basically, and then you end up having like a full-time drug dealer essentially, you know. And then that progressed to heroin addiction when I could no longer kind of wait for my friend to have a couple perks, or not really a friend, but a dealer.
Right.
Then I started, you know, just switched over to heroin, and it just led me down a dark road, you know. And I think it's important is I wanted to stop for a long time, and I couldn't do it on my own. And until I got help and there was treatment and people loved me until I could love myself, that's when things started changing for me. But throughout this entire progression, I had seen addiction in my family, and I started to learn, hey, grandfather had it, father had it, you know, and I started to say, oh man, I'm going down a bad path. But I couldn't stop.
But you knew that intellectually.
I did, but when it push came to shove, and it was like, should I do it, should I not? I could never really say no. And I tried many times. I could stop for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But then as soon as I would justify a reason to use, whether it was I didn't feel good or I can get away with it just for tonight and I won't do it tomorrow. What
did you start to see, like the toll it was taking on you? You know, did it start to impact your relationships? Did it affect your work? What was the toll it started
to impact everything. At first, it impacted me, like I guess on a, like you said, on an intellectual level. Like I knew, like deep down inside, like you better stop doing this. Right. You're going to lose everything. Right. You know, because I knew I was living a double life. I was coaching football. I was in school. I had a girlfriend that didn't know I even used, and then I just kept doing it more and more and spending more and more, you know. And then what I started to realize was I have no control over this, and that's what they tell us in the recovery community, is that the great obsession of every addict or alcoholic is that one day he can control and enjoy his drinking. So I was trying to control it and enjoy it, and I just progressively over time, because it's a progressive disease, lost control. Then I would tell myself the lie, I'm going to go to class tomorrow, or I'll stop tomorrow.
It was always tomorrow.
Yeah, and then like it was like I'll never do it before practice, and for a long time I didn't, or I'll always wait till after the game before I do it. At the time when I was coaching, and then I started to break every rule that I said I never do. I never steal. I never do this. I never do this. I kept crossing those lines, and those lines kept getting worse and worse and worse in the behavior until I just had like zero control. And at that point, it was like we were talking earlier, that hopeless feeling where it was like I just kind of threw my hands up in the air and I just kind of ran with it, you know. But you're trying to. I think a lot of people are trying to stop, but they just don't know. They don't know why they're using, and two, they don't know what it takes to stop. And that was me for a long time. But eventually, using became paramount to everything in my life, you know. It became paramount to being a son, a coach, a student, just a member of society. Like the drug was paramount to everything. More
important than all of those things in your life. That drug took that control.
Because in my mind, it's telling me that's what made me feel good. You know, in the end, it was as important to my survival as oxygen was, and it really was. Yeah. Once the money ran out, and you don't know where your next fix is coming from, that's a very panicky feeling, and that's a lot of times why people who have substance abuse problems tend to bottom out a lot sooner than people with alcoholism, or just drink, because the supply isn't readily available, and the money, it's a lot more expensive.
That's right. So you mentioned stealing, so there was that whole aspect of things that you never would have done in your life, the way you were raised and the kind of man you are, but you get reduced to doing that in order to support the habit. Right? But then what finally, when you said, I've got to do something and take some steps or action, what was the first step that you took? What did you do when you finally hit rock bottom, and what was the first step?
Well,
how did you get?
To be honest, I didn't make the first step. I was so afraid of going to treatment and giving up the life that I had already lost. In my mind, I was still going to be able to coach. In my mind, I was still going to be able to save my relationship. In my mind, I didn't need to drop out of college. I just needed to stop drinking and drugging, and then I could do all these things. But every time I tried to do that, I always went back because I couldn't handle it yet. A changing moment for me, and I went in and out of detoxes for about a year.
Oh, so you did go in and out.
I was in and out big time, and I would.
Did someone commit you? Did you turn yourself
most of the time they were forcing me to go.
Forcing you?
Yeah, I would always refuse
your family
treatment.
just saying you
Yeah,
gotta go.
I truly believed in my own mind, and I talk with my aunts and mother about this sometimes, that I was going to stop on my own.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times I kick cold turkey on the couch, and then you know, I'd end up using like 2 weeks later. But I really believe, no, I don't need help. I'm not like them. And for me, when it kept getting worse and worse and worse, there was a 2-week period where I basically totaled my mother's vehicle, driving back from Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and luckily I hit a flatbed tow truck. I was life flighted to Worcester Memorial Hospital, and when I was in that bed, my mother showed up a couple hours later, and my aunt, they're like, "You're going to treatment," and all I could think about was, how am I going to, let me use one more time before I go. I was like, get me the heck out of here. I want to go back home, and then I'll go to treatment. They put me in the psych ward there, which I was psychotic. I deserved to be there. They ended up letting me go. I went into a treatment for like 5 days, basically. I came back out of that treatment center. They offered me a chance to stay, but I made up a lie, like told my mom I got no place to go. They didn't want me to come home. Basically, at this point, I came home. I had like a trash bag in my hand. I'm walking through Franklin Center. I go home. I'm on the couch. I just kind of broke down, and I'm like, you know what? It's not even, like you were saying earlier, it's just not even worth it anymore. And there's no car anymore. I tried to take some money from my mother. They didn't want to give it to me. I take the money, and I was riding a bicycle down to Woonsocket, Rhode Island, basically. And that's when they had finally they called the cops on me, which was a blessing. I was very mad at that time, but they finally called the cops. One of the officers, and the cops were always very kind to me. You know, like, you know, enough's enough. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go into jail. I'll never be able to coach again, all this stuff. And they threw me in. I spent the weekend in jail, and my family said, you either go live at the Pine Street Inn or you go to treatment. You're not welcome here anymore. And they meant it. And that's when I was forced into treatment. So on my own willpower, I honestly, if I didn't run out of money and I wasn't forced into treatment, I don't think I ever would have stopped. Like
so your mom said to you, you can't come home. These are your choices, but coming home isn't it? Because she wanted to save you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was, I had a cousin that was always very kind to me, and he kind of he said that as well. You know, because I could always kind of manipulate my mom, but there were certain people that you just can't manipulate, and then it was just like,
that's a part of the disease too, the manipulation, isn't
it?
It
is, and you manipulate yourself just as much. I really believe that I was going to do it, and my motives were good. I just didn't know what I was up against and how much of a grip and how sick I was mentally, how sick my thinking was to thinking that I could do it on my own. But I really believed I could, you know. So
then once you went to detox, and they drew the line, and you knew then. Was that when AA entered your life, or where? Yeah.
That's when. So I basically knew I had to go to a halfway house, that is. There's a great recovery community in Boston. Massachusetts is known for having one of the best. There's Mass Health. I think it was Romney Care before Obamacare.
Right.
So they have state-funded places set up, and what you do is, so I went to a holding facility for a couple of days, and then they brought me to a halfway house, and at that halfway house I was counseled. I was forced to go to meetings, and I was able to, after 7 days of staying in the house, go out and get a job. And during the day I would work, and then I would come home, go to meetings, I would have counseling, and that was a 6-month cycle.
Oh, it was 6 months.
Yeah, being in a safe environment, a place that I was around other people who were trying to do the right thing. I was being taught by professionals and other recovering people in recovery on how to live, and how to cope with addiction. I didn't want to be there for a long time. I hated it. That emotional turmoil when I was like a raw nerve ending. You know, it was all the guilt, all the shame, all the fear.
That's it.
All the fear of what I had done, and no one was really talking to me at that time because I had just pushed everybody away.
You burned a lot of bridges there.
Yeah, I did. And I pushed everybody away because I just withdrew from life when I was using, but I just felt very uncomfortable in my own skin there for a while. But I think that's why further treatment is so important, is because you're in a safe place, and it's okay to not feel okay in your own skin, and you're constantly around other people that are keeping you busy, keeping you out of your own head, out of your own negative thinking, and are teaching you how to think in a way that you don't want to pick up again.
So that was a 6-month process.
Yes.
And insurance helped with that?
It was actually DPH, so it was state funded.
Okay.
So as long as I got to that level, I just had to pay a stipend to the house out of my weekly paycheck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's actually a really nice setup, and the places are clean, they're well run.
And so 6 months is over. Then the next step was, where did you go from there? Did you go
The
back?
next step, I went to a sober house, and they told me when I left that place, don't change anything. Keep doing the same thing. And at that point, I think my head was a little too big, and I thought I had everything figured out. And about a week before leaving the halfway house, I was working at a fitness gym in downtown Boston, and there was this girl that lived in South Boston that had been going in and out, and we had talked as I'd worked there. And she was like, hey, come out to the bars in Southie this weekend. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do it this weekend. And let's exchange numbers. We'll talk in a couple of weeks. And at this point, I wasn't even allowed to have a cell phone. So we go to exchange the numbers, and I kind of, as we're doing it, I kind of forget. I'm like, I don't even have a phone. So I make up some excuse right away. Like I start the relationship off with a lie. I'm like, I'm changing plans right now. I'm like, well, let me write your number down on a card. But so basically, my priorities changed as I left that house. I took a job to try to make more money, because now I'm starting to get back into life, and I'm only 6 months sober. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to be seeing this girl, I'm like, I got to have enough money to take her out in downtown Boston. This front desk job at the gym isn't cutting it. So I take a sales job that I really have like no business like doing yet. I haven't sold anything in my entire life.
Quite ready for that.
Not at all. So I took that job, and what's slowly happening was I'm starting to put my recovery on the back burner. And they say stay out of relationships for a while, and I just wasn't ready for it. And they say fear is what's going to lead me back to a drink or drug more than anything. And I made a decision at that point based off financial fear and fear. What if this girl doesn't like me? Because now you're in early recovery, and you're starting to get back into life, and you want acceptance, and you want everything back right now. And I just got in over my head. And in 2 months after that, I had relapsed. So 2 months from leaving the house, my meetings were on the back burner. I was going to one a week, and then what happened was my life was starting to get unmanageable in sobriety. Because my thinking wasn't healthy. I was full of fear. I was full of resentment. I was full of financial fear and insecurity, self-pity. Things aren't going exactly the way I want them to, and that's when my emotions start to tell me, well, you know the solution. You know what you can do to fix this. And I believed the lie that using was a good idea. And
so there was a relapse.
Yeah, and it was bad. I used once, and before I was done with the first one, I was on my way to get the second one, basically, and I was like, why did I do that? And basically, I stopped showing up for work. I just couldn't do it. And I couldn't function without it. I couldn't function without the drug. And before I knew it, I was basically back in rehab.
So then, did you go back to the same place? Did you go to a different place? Or?
I went to a different place. Yeah, I went to I stayed in treatment for about 30 days, which I always think is good because you have enough time to physically withdraw.
Yeah, the detox part.
Yeah, the detox part ended, and then I got back. I was able to sleep. I was able to eat again. Start to feel a little bit better, and then I went to a sober house there, and I ended up being there for 10 months. But I was still like, it just...
Boy, it's not easy though, is it? It's a long process, isn't it? When people think it's just going to, you really have to be committed and dedicated and big chunks of time, huh? To get through it.
And they say like you're just in so much pain in early recovery because you no longer have a solution, so you feel everything. So now like that's
all
why
that pain.
Yeah, all the especially the fear of how am I going to live? Like and in my mind like there was still such a stigma around like addiction. Like I thought you still feel like a bad person. How am I ever going to get a girlfriend again when they know? How am I ever going to? Who's ever going to hire me again? And all those things aren't true. They're all lies we tell ourselves, and it just creates a very like unmanageable existence like within our own heads. That's when I was convinced. I started to realize that alcohol and drugs weren't my problem, and my thinking was my problem. Alcohol and drugs were my solution. Was when I remember. After I relapsed and I got to that sober house, I came into contact with someone who kind of started giving me life-changing advice. Because at this point, I was willing to listen. I was in enough pain. And he said, you didn't relapse because of alcohol and drugs. He goes, you relapsed because of your thinking. He goes, you had untreated alcoholism or untreated addiction. He goes, you were full of fear, you were full of resentment again, you had a lot of self-pity, and you didn't know how to handle it. And that's when I realized, like, I really am the problem. My thinking is really the problem. The thinking that leads me back to think it's okay to drink and drug after what it had done to me 8 months ago is insane. So
it's really being able to live and experience and feel all the pain, the shame, the vulnerability, all of that comes out, and that's the part that keeps driving it too. So when you deal with all that, right, inner stuff, that's the courage. That's the part that takes a lot of courage to face all that, right?
Yeah, and it does, and I think, you know, it just takes, like, I don't know what it takes, but I just know you come to a point where you use alcohol and drugs so much and they just stop working.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never forget my dad saying that to me one time. This wasn't like a great father-to-son talk. He had a lot of guilt and shame. He was a nice guy great guy through a lot of my childhood.
Yeah.
And he started using again when I think I was about 15. But he said, and I think I was about 23 at this time. He just said, one day these things are just going to stop working for you, and eventually they did. You know, the pain of using became greater than the pain of sobriety, if that makes any sense. Like what it had done to my life and how I couldn't believe the lie anymore that it was going to fix me.
So I have a question, and it's not that you're an expert, and I'm not trying to put you in that position, but a lot of the stuff that when I read about addiction and that feeling of hopelessness, I just want to focus a little bit more on that, because too many young people are saying, well, I failed in my relationships, my job stinks, I don't have a job, I give up, you know. What do you say, what advice would you give or to those young people who are feeling that and saying, I can't even take the step to, you know, get out of bed, because for what? You know, what do you say?
I would say that, and I don't think, you know, when you're in the grips of it, hearing someone say it doesn't mean a whole lot. You know, it might for some people.
Yeah.
But I would just say that we do live very happy, healthy, and productive lives, and peace of mind does come back, and we are not consumed with the thought of alcohol and drugs. Very rarely does drinking and drugging come back into my mind. I live like a normal human being now. Go out to places where there's alcohol. They teach us not to hide from it. When you change your thinking, it no longer looks appealing. And I would just say that give yourself a chance. And if it's not working after 3 or 4 months, you know, you can always go back. That's what they say a lot of times, you know. And don't have a preconceived notion of what rehab is like, or don't think you know what it's like, or don't think you know. Like when I started going to recovery meetings, like 12-step meetings, I already thought I knew what it was about, and I had no idea. They'd just be a little bit open-minded and give it a shot. How
often do you go to meetings?
I go probably I probably still go about four times a week. At the beginning I was going 7.
Yeah.
I was probably going 6 or 7 days a week. Now I probably go like 4 or 5. And I try to stay on top of it, because in the past...
That's pretty important, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
In the past, what happens is life gets busy, and the things that recovery has given me become more important than my recovery, and that's when you start to realize I'm starting to head down the wrong path.
So the big thing, the point I'm taking from it, too, is that recovery, you have to focus on that first. Like, you want to go back to your normal life, but it's really focusing on that first.
Well, my mindset, and I think a lot of, like, young people, is like, I thought everything was going to make me happy. I thought, you know, money will make me happy, a girlfriend will make me happy, I just need a job again, I just need to do this, and I'm seeking all these material solutions to an inside emotional and thinking problem. And I even got a lot of those things back when I got sober, but they didn't keep me sober.
Right.
And I think, you know, I was taught that trying to find a way to have peace of mind, you know, without alcohol and drugs, and finding contented sobriety, having peace of mind in sobriety is the best way to stay sober. And this time around, it was like I didn't do anything for a year. Because I had known I had failed when I tried to do too much. You know, I tried to just get back into life too soon, and emotionally I just wasn't there yet. And yeah, if you keep your recovery first, like the sky is absolutely the limit.
And then you come to sort of really, you must take a great sense of pride when you start to feel like that inner strength, you're getting stronger and stronger, and you realize you don't need those other things outside to make you happy. that it comes
yeah,
from?
it's essentially a drug in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find it's almost like you find a new source of opiate or a new source of alcohol. You just have this like overwhelming peace all the time, and the thing is, you no longer have all those fearful thoughts, fearing the future, fearing relationships, fearing failure, financial insecurity. Those are a lot of the fears that we have. And they say fear, like I said earlier, fear will drive us back to drink. And you just realize, like, I'm going to be okay, you know. And there is a recovery community out there that will love you and teach you how to live, and it's just really good.
So from the just because we want to wrap it up, and final words, like just from your heart, if you just a piece of advice that you'd give to, you know, like one final word that you would say to the parents and the young adults out there suffering from this is. What would you say, like a final thing to them?
I would just say, like, because I was like my mom really wanted to see me get sober for a long time, and I kept going back home, and it's a family disease, and it can just drag everybody down, because people really genuinely believe, and they want to know that family members are going to do it. I would just say, like, if you're caught up in it, give it a shot at getting some treatment. Just give yourself a little bit of time, and if you're a parent, and I really want to emphasize this, like, accepting powerlessness, like, you know, part of like Learn to Cope, which is a program for parents. You didn't cause it, and you can't solve it. And the best thing people ever did for me was say, get out of here. And that pain of being, you know, alone, and I was challenged. Do you want to be homeless? Do you want to be a legitimate street junkie? Or do you want to give rehab a shot? That was the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's good advice. That's good to know. That's really important. And I'm just going to remind everybody about the coalition. You're part of that. I saw you at the community coalition. I want to let people in town remind people that on Wednesday, August 12th at 7:00 p.m. at the high school, Franklin High School, the coalition will be meeting to see how again we can come together as a community to really help support our young people through this crisis. And again, Derek, I want to thank you very much. This was really important, and thank you. Really appreciate it. And good luck, and you know, maybe you'll come back again sometime. And so again, thank you, everybody. This is It Takes a Village. I'm Dr. Ann Bergen. Thank you for watching.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching. What is community without community support? Without community access? Without communication that creates a common bond? You can make community by making community TV. Contact your public access community TV center. Learn how you can help, because you can. Volunteer today. When you support your community TV, you also support your community.